Zethkar stared at the blue light blinking on his desk. Another message had arrived at the archive station. He sighed and touched the control panel with one of his long, thin fingers. Most messages were requests for old data or complaints about missing files. Nothing exciting ever happened at the Outer Rim archives. The hologram appeared above his desk. A human face looked back at him. The woman had short, dark hair and worried eyes. She wore a blue uniform with strange symbols on it. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Earthship Perseverance," she said. "I need to speak with someone who knows about the old civilizations. We found something that should not be here." Zethkar leaned forward in his chair. Humans were new to space travel. They had only been flying between stars for about 100 years. Most older species thought humans were too young and too reckless to be trusted with important discoveries. The message continued. "We are in the void sector, coordinates 847.2 by 139.7. Our sensors detected something massive here. But according to all our star charts, this area is supposed to be empty space." The void sector, Zethkar's four eyes widened. He knew that area very well, too well. It was where the architects had lived before they disappeared. Every Villani child learned about the architects in school. They were the first intelligent species. In the galaxy, they had built amazing cities and machines. Then one day, they were gone. No one knew why or how. "Please respond if you receive this message," Captain Chun said. "We need answers about what we found, and we need them soon." The hologram flickered and went dark. Zethkar sat in silence for a long moment. His people, the Villani, were known for being careful. They followed rules. They asked permission before doing anything important. But something about this human's message made his heart beat faster. He pulled up his files on the void sector. Page after page of research filled his screens. The architects had built incredible things in that region of space. Their technology was far beyond anything current civilizations could make. But all of it had vanished with them, leaving only empty space behind, or so everyone thought. Zethkar touched another control. A star map appeared in the air above his desk. The void sector was marked in red. It was far from any trade routes or colonies. Ships avoided the area because there was nothing there worth finding. At least, that was what the official report said. He thought about Captain Chun's worried expression. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy. They were brave sometimes. Too brave, they went places other species would not go. They asked questions other species were afraid to ask. The Galactic Council often complained about human curiosity getting them into trouble, but maybe that curiosity had led them to find something important. Zethkar made a decision that went against everything his people believed in. He opened a communication channel to the human ship. The message would take several hours to reach them across the vast distance of space. "Captain Chun, this is Archivist Zethkar of the Villani Historical Archive. I received your message about the void sector. You are correct that this area should be empty according to all known records. However, I have extensive research on what used to exist there. I'm coming to meet you. Do not approach whatever you found until I arrive." He closed the channel and began preparing his ship. The journey would take 3 days at maximum speed. He had not asked permission from his supervisors. He had not filed the proper reports. His people would be angry when they found out. But something told him this was more important than following rules. As his small research vessel lifted off from the archive station, Zethkar thought about the architects. Their disappearance was one of the great mysteries of the galaxy. Some scientists believed they had died in a war. Others thought they had simply left to explore other galaxies. A few believed they had evolved beyond physical form and become pure energy. None of the theories explained why they had left no trace behind. The architects had once controlled hundreds of star systems. They had built massive space stations and planetary cities. All of it should have left some mark on the galaxy. But there was nothing. It was as if they had been erased from existence. The flight to the void sector gave Zethkar time to review his research. He had spent 20 years studying the architects. He knew their building styles, their technology patterns, their art. He had visited the ruins of civilizations that had traded with them before the disappearance. But he had never found any direct evidence of architect technology still functioning. What could the humans have discovered that had remained hidden for so long? On the second day of his journey, another message arrived from Captain Chun. This time she looked even more worried. Archivist Zethkar, thank you for responding. We are keeping our distance from the object as you suggested, but we have detected energy readings coming from it. The structure appears to be active. Our science officer believes it is some kind of station or facility. We have also detected long-range sensors sweeping our ship. Something knows we are here. Zethkar felt a chill run through his body. Active architect technology was beyond dangerous. It was impossible. The Galactic Council had searched teams looking for architect artifacts for centuries. None had ever been found that still worked. He increased his ship's speed, pushing the engines beyond safe limits. If the humans had found functioning architect technology, they were in more danger than they knew. The architects had been incredibly advanced, but their technology was not always safe for younger species to be around. On the third day, as his ship approached the void sector, Zethkar saw something on his sensors that made him stop breathing. There was definitely a massive structure in the empty space ahead. His instruments could barely detect it, as if it existed only partly in normal space. But it was there, and it was huge. The human ship Perseverance was a small dot next to the alien structure. Zethkar opened a communication channel as soon as he was in range. Captain Chun, this is Zethkar. I am approaching your position. What you have found appears to be an architect facility. This is an extremely important discovery. The human captain's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired but determined. Archivist, we are glad you came. Our scans show the structure is definitely artificial. It seems to be phasing in and out of normal space. We have never seen anything like it. Zethkar guided his ship closer to the Perseverance. As he did, he got his first clear look at what the humans had discovered. The structure was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It was made of some kind of crystal material that seemed to bend light around it. Parts of it appeared solid while other sections looked like they were made of energy. Captain Chun, he said quietly, I believe you have found something that was never meant to be found. This facility does not match any architect technology in our historical records. It is far more advanced than anything they were known to have built. The human woman nodded grimly. That is what we were afraid of. The question is, what do we do about it? Zethkar looked at the massive alien structure floating in the darkness. For the first time in his life, he truly understood why other species found humans both fascinating and frightening. They had discovered something that could change everything anyone thought they knew about the galaxy. And instead of running away, they wanted to investigate it. We find out what it is, he said. Finally, together. Zethkar docked his small ship to the human vessel Perseverance. The airlock hissed open, and he stepped inside. The human ship smelled different from Villani vessels. It had a sharp, clean scent mixed with something organic. The corridors were narrower than he was used to, but they felt warm and lived. Captain Chun met him at the docking bay. She was shorter than he expected, barely reaching his chest. But her handshake was firm, and her eyes held the same determination he had seen in the message. Thank you for coming, she said. I know this must have been a difficult decision for you, Zethkar nodded. My people would say I should have reported this to the Galactic Council first. But something told me time was important. You were right. About that, Captain Chun said as she led him through the ship. The structure has become more active since we arrived. Our sensors are picking up energy patterns that seem to respond to our presence. They entered the bridge of the human ship. It was smaller than a Villani command center, but every surface held screens and controls. The crew worked quietly at their stations, monitoring the strange object outside. Zethkar noticed how focused they all seemed. There was no panic despite the impossible thing floating in space near them. Show our guest what we found. Captain Chun said to a young woman at the science station. The main screen lit up with an image of the crystal structure. Zethkar had seen it through his own ship's sensors, but this view was much clearer. The facility was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the largest space stations in the galaxy. It was built from materials that seemed to shift between solid matter and pure energy. We estimate it is at least 50 kilometers long, the science officer said. But our instruments cannot get accurate readings. Parts of the structure appear to exist in normal space while other sections phase in and out of reality. Zethkar studied the image carefully. The design was definitely architect in origin, but unlike anything in his research files, the flowing lines and crystal formations matched their artistic style, but the technology level was far beyond anything the architects had been known to possess. There, he said, pointing at a section of the structure. Those symbols along the outer hull, they are architect writing, but in a form I have never seen before. The characters are more complex than anything in our historical records. Captain Chin moved closer to the screen. Can you read any of it? Some of it, Zethkar said slowly. This section appears to say something about a guardian or keeper, and this part mentions waiting or watching, but the grammar is unlike anything I studied. The science officer, who had introduced herself as Dr. Martinez, pulled up another display. We have detected regular energy pulses coming from the center of the structure. They started about 6 hours after we arrived. It is almost like the facility is scanning us. Scanning for what? Captain Chun asked. Unknown, Dr. Martinez replied. But the pulses are becoming stronger. Whatever is inside that thing, it knows we are here. Zethkar felt a chill run through his body. Active architect technology was supposed to be impossible. The architects had vanished millions of years ago. Nothing they had built should still be working after all this time. Captain, the communications officer called out suddenly. I am picking up something on the long-range sensors. Multiple contacts approaching our position. Captain Chen moved to the tactical display. How many ships? At least 20, possibly more. They are still too far away to identify, but they are moving fast. Very fast. Zethkar looked at the approaching contacts and felt his worst fears confirmed. Captain, those energy signatures. I have seen them in Galactic Council reports. Those are devourer ships. The bridge fell silent. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the devourers. They were a hostile force that had appeared on the edge of known space several years ago. They consumed entire planets, leaving nothing behind but empty space. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. The Galactic Council had tried to establish communication with them, but they never responded to any messages. How long until they reach us? Captain Chun asked. At their current speed, approximately 18 hours, the tactical officer replied. Captain Chun turned to Zethkar. Is it possible the devourers are drawn to architect technology? Zethkar thought about it. I do not know, but the timing cannot be coincidence. This facility has been hidden for millions of years. We arrive, it becomes active, and now the devourers are coming. There must be a connection. Dr. Martinez was studying her instruments with growing excitement. Captain, I am detecting a docking bay on the structure. It appears to be designed for ships our size. Absolutely not, Zethkar said immediately. Architect technology is extremely dangerous. We do not understand how it works. Going inside could kill us all. Captain Chin looked at him calmly. What if staying outside kills us all? Those devourer ships will be here in less than a day. Our 2 ships cannot fight 20 of theirs. But maybe inside that structure we can find answers or weapons or a way to escape. Zethkar stared at her. This was exactly the kind of reckless thinking that made other species nervous about humans. But as he looked around the bridge, he saw that the entire crew was nodding in agreement. They were not being reckless. They were being practical. You are seriously considering entering an unknown alien facility that has been dormant for millions of years? He asked. Do you have a better suggestion? Captain Chun replied. Zethkar thought about it. His own ship had no weapons and could not outrun devourer vessels. The Perseverance was armed, but it was designed for exploration, not battle. Running away would only delay the inevitable. The devourers would catch them in open space where there would be no chance of survival. "If we go inside," he said slowly, "I should lead the exploration team. I know more about architect technology than anyone on your ship," Captain Chun smiled. "I was hoping you would say that." 30 minutes later, a small team prepared to board the alien structure. Captain Chen insisted on leading the mission herself, despite protests from her crew. Dr. Martinez came along to analyze any technology they found. 2 security officers carried weapons and scanning equipment, and Zethkar brought his portable research computers filled with everything known about the architects. As their shuttle approached the docking bay, Zethkar watched the crystal walls of the structure grow. Larger outside the windows? Up close, he could see that the materials were even stranger than they had appeared on the sensors. They seemed to be alive, pulsing with internal light. "The docking bay is opening," Captain Chun announced from the pilot seat. Large sections of the crystal wall folded back like flower petals, revealing a space large enough for several ships. Emergency lighting activated as they entered, bathing everything in a soft blue glow. "Atmosphere is present," Dr. Martinez reported, checking her instruments. "Oxygen levels are suitable for both humans and Villani. Temperature is comfortable. But these readings make no sense. This air is fresh, as if it was generated recently." They landed the shuttle in the center of the docking bay. As soon as the engines shut down, the crystal walls began to close again, sealing them inside. "Well," Captain Chun said, checking her weapon, "I guess we are committed now." Zethkar looked around the alien chamber. Symbols were carved into every surface, many of them glowing with their own light. The air hummed with energy, and he could feel something vast and intelligent waiting deeper in the structure. "Captain," he said quietly, "I think we are about to meet whoever has been sleeping here for millions of years." The inner doors of the docking bay began to open, revealing a corridor that stretched into the heart of the ancient facility. Soft music drifted from somewhere ahead, beautiful and haunting. It was a melody unlike anything any of them had ever heard. "Stay close together," Captain Chun ordered, "and be ready for anything." As they stepped into the corridor, Zethkar wondered if they were making the greatest discovery in galactic history, or walking into a trap that had been waiting for them since before their civilizations existed. The corridor stretched ahead of them like a tunnel made of living light. The walls pulsed with soft blue energy that seemed to respond to their footsteps. With each step they took, new symbols appeared in the crystal surfaces around them. Zethkar tried to read the writing, but the characters changed too quickly for him to understand. "The air is getting warmer," Dr. Martinez whispered, checking her scanner. "And there are trace amounts of other gases mixing in. The atmosphere is adjusting itself to our presence." Captain Ching kept her weapon ready as she led the group forward. "Is that good or bad?" "Unknown," Zethkar replied. "Architect technology was designed to be helpful to other species. But we do not know if this facility follows the same rules." The corridor opened into a vast chamber that took their breath away. The ceiling stretched so high above them that it disappeared into darkness. Thousands of crystal pillars filled the space, each one glowing with different colors. But it was what lay between the pillars that made them all stop and stare. Books. Millions of books floated in the air, their pages turning slowly by themselves. But these were not normal books. They were made of the same crystal material as the walls, and words appeared and disappeared on their pages like living text. "It is a library," Zethkar said in amazement. "The largest library I have ever seen." Dr. Martinez walked up to one of the floating books. As she approached, it drifted down to hover in front of her. The pages stopped turning, and text appeared in what looked like human writing. "Captain," she called out, "this book is showing me information about Earth, our history, our technology, our biology. How is that possible?" Captain Chun moved to another book. It too descended to meet her, displaying information about human space exploration. "These books know about us?" They are reading our minds or our equipment somehow. Zethkar reached for a crystal book of his own. It showed him Villani history, but with details he had never read before. Information about his people that had been lost for thousands of years. This is impossible. Some of these records predate any known historical documentation. A sound echoed through the chamber. It was like singing, but deeper and more complex than any voice they had ever heard. The crystal pillars began to glow brighter, and a path of light appeared on the floor, leading deeper into the facility. "I think we are being invited somewhere," Captain Chun said. They followed the glowing path through several more chambers. Each room contained wonders that would have taken years to study properly. Machines that created matter from pure energy. Star maps showing galaxies beyond their own. Gardens where plants made of light grew in patterns too, beautiful to describe. But it was the final chamber that changed everything. The room was circular and enormous. In the center stood a single pillar, made of clear crystal. Inside the pillar, suspended in some kind of energy field, was a figure that could only be an architect. The being was tall and thin, with features that seemed both ancient and ageless. Its skin was pale blue, almost translucent, and its eyes were closed as if it were sleeping. It wore robes that seemed to be made of the same energy that filled the facility. As they approached the pillar, the figure's eyes opened. They were completely white, with no pupils, but somehow Zethkar could feel the immense intelligence behind them. "Welcome," the architect said, though its mouth did not move. The words appeared directly in their minds, translated perfectly into each person's native language. "I am Keeper Axiom. I have been waiting for you." Captain Chun stepped forward, keeping her weapon lowered but ready. "Waiting for us specifically?" "Not you personally," Keeper Axiom replied, "but beings like you. Younger species who have reached the point of cooperation across racial boundaries. You have come together to face the unknown despite your differences. This is what we hoped would eventually happen." Zethkar found his voice. "You are the last of the architects. Your people vanished millions of years ago. Where did they go?" Keeper Axiom's expression was sad. "They transcended. They evolved beyond physical form and moved to a higher dimension of existence. But in doing so, they lost the ability to interact with this reality. They could no longer protect the galaxy from the threats they had once contained." "What threats?" "Dr. Martinez asked. The chamber around them changed. The walls became transparent, showing them images of space, but not normal space. This was somewhere else, a place where the laws of physics seemed different. In this strange dimension, massive creatures moved through darkness. They were huge, beyond description, with tentacles that could wrap around entire planets. "The Devourers," Keeper Axiom said. "They are not from our dimension. They come from a parallel reality where matter and energy work differently. Long ago, they found a way to break through into our universe. The architects fought a war against them that lasted for thousands of years. The images showed battles on a scale that was hard to imagine. Architect ships the size of moons fighting creatures that could swallow stars. Entire solar systems being consumed or destroyed in the conflict. We won that war," Keeper Axiom continued. "But the victory came at a great cost. To seal the dimensional breach permanently, the architects had to sacrifice their physical forms. They transcended to a higher state of being, but they could no longer directly affect our reality." Captain Chun was studying the images carefully. "But the Devourers are back. We have seen them destroying planets on the edge of our galaxy." "Yes," Keeper Axiom said. "The seal was not perfect. Small breaches have been opening, allowing individual Devourer scouts to enter our dimension. They have been calling to their kind, trying to create a larger breach that would allow the full invasion force to return." Zethkar felt sick. "How many of them are there in the parallel dimension?" "Billions. Enough to consume every planet, every star, every speck of matter in this galaxy. And when they are finished here, they will find ways to reach other galaxies." The security officers were looking nervous. One of them spoke up. "Can they be stopped?" Keeper Axiom nodded slowly. This facility was built as a failsafe. It contains the technology needed to seal the dimensional breach permanently. But there is a problem. What kind of problem? Captain Chun asked. The sealing process requires beings from this dimension to operate the machinery. The architects in their transcended state cannot touch the controls or activate the systems. They tried to find other species capable of using the technology, but none were advanced enough. Until now, Zethkar said, understanding. Until now, Keeper Axiom agreed. Humans and Villani working together represent something new in this galaxy. Your species complement each other. Human courage and ingenuity combined with Villani knowledge and precision. Together you might be capable of operating the seal. Dr. Martinez was scanning the chamber with her instruments. How long would the sealing process take? Approximately 6 hours to charge the system and create the seal. But during that time, this facility will be completely vulnerable. The Devourers will sense what we are doing and will send everything they have to stop us. Captain Chun looked at her team. How many Devourer ships are coming? The long-range sensors detected 20 ships, one of the security officers said. But if they call for reinforcements, they will, Keeper Axiom said. Once the sealing process begins, every Devourer in this part of the galaxy will converge on this location, hundreds of ships. Maybe thousands. The chamber fell silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing. 2 small ships could not fight off hundreds of enemy vessels. It would be impossible, but then Captain Chun did something that amazed Zethkar. She smiled. Impossible odds, she said. My favorite kind. She turned to Keeper Axiom. What do we need to do? The architect gestured toward panels that were rising from the floor around the central pillar. They were covered with controls that seemed to shift between physical buttons and energy patterns. The process is complex, but I will guide you through it. However, you must understand the risk. If we fail, not only will the Devourers destroy this facility, but the partial activation will weaken the existing seals. The full invasion force will break through within days instead of years. Zethkar looked at the humans around him. They were scared. He could see it in their faces. But they were not backing down. They were already moving toward the controls. Ready to begin. Wait, he said. I need to contact my ship and send a message to the Galactic Council. They need to know what is happening here. Captain Chun nodded. Do it quickly. We start the sealing process in 1 hour. As Zethkar activated his communicator, he realized something had changed inside him. He was no longer thinking like a careful Villani researcher. He was thinking like someone who was about to save the galaxy or die trying. The sealing process began with a sound like thunder rolling through the crystal chambers. Keeper Axiom guided Captain Chun and Dr. Martinez through the activation sequence while Zethkar worked to understand the architect systems. The controls were unlike anything he had studied before, responding to thought as much as touch. The dimensional breach is located 17 light-years from here, Keeper Axiom explained as energy patterns flowed through the facility. The seal must be projected across that distance while maintaining perfect stability. Any interruption will cause the process to fail. Through the transparent walls, they could see space around the facility beginning to change. Waves of energy rippled outward from the structure, distorting the stars and creating rainbow patterns in the darkness. The station was announcing its presence to everything within 100 light-years. How long until the Devourers arrive? Captain Chun asked, her hands moving across the control panels. Based on their previous speed, less than 4 hours, Doctor. Martinez replied, checking her scanner. But Captain, I am detecting new contacts on the long-range sensors, a lot of them. The tactical display showed dozens of red dots approaching from multiple directions. Then hundreds. The Devourers were not just sending their patrol ships. They were bringing everything they had. Zethkar felt fear growing in his chest. Keeper Axiom, can we defend this facility against so many ships? The ancient being looked at him with those strange white eyes. This station has defensive systems, but they have not been used for millions of years. And the attacking force will be larger than anything the architects faced in their war. Captain Chun activated her communicator. Perseverance, this is the Captain, what is the status of our ship? The voice of her tactical officer crackled through the device. All systems ready, Captain? But we are detecting massive enemy formations approaching. We count at least 300 ships, possibly more. They will be here in approximately 3 hours. Understood. Begin implementing defensive pattern alpha. Use everything we brought? Zethkar looked at her in confusion. Defensive pattern alpha? Captain Chun smiled grimly. Something we prepared on the way here. We may be explorers, but we always plan for the worst-case scenario. Through the station's sensors, Zethkar watched the human ship begin to move. Instead of taking a defensive position near the facility, it started flying in a complex pattern around the structure. As it moved, it released small objects into space. Mines, Dr. Martinez explained, seeing his puzzled expression. We brought every piece of defensive equipment we could fit in our cargo bay. Mines, sensor, decoys, automated defense drones. We are creating a defensive perimeter. But there are hundreds of enemy ships, Zethkar protested. How can mines and drones stop so many? They cannot, Captain Chun admitted, but they can slow them down, buy us time. Make them pay for every meter of space they advance. The sealing process continued, filling the station with more energy. Zethkar could feel the power building in the walls around them, but he could also sense something else. The dimensional breach was responding to their efforts. It was fighting back. The breach is trying to expand, Keeper Axiom warned. The Devourers on the other side are pushing against the seal. If they break through before we complete the process, the invasion will begin immediately. On the sensors, the first Devourer ships appeared at the edge of the system. They were massive, each one larger than any ship in the Galactic Council fleet. Their hulls were black and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As they moved, space itself seemed to bend around them. Captain, the voice from the Perseverance called out, enemy ships have entered weapons range. They are beginning their attack run. The battle began with flashes of light in the darkness. The human ship darted between the enemy vessels, its weapons firing constantly. But the Devourer ships barely seemed to notice the attacks. Their own weapons reached out like tentacles of dark energy, trying to grab the much smaller human vessel. Our weapons are not penetrating their shields, the tactical officer reported. But we are leading them through the minefield. Explosions bloomed in space as Devourer ships struck the hidden mines. Several of the smaller enemy vessels were destroyed, but the larger ones continued forward. There were simply too many of them. Zethkar watched his own ship join the battle. It was not armed for combat, but it released clouds of metallic dust that interfered with enemy sensors. Every little bit helped, but it was clear that the defensive efforts were only delaying the inevitable. 2 hours until the seal is complete, Keeper Axiom announced. The first wave of enemy ships will reach the station in 30 minutes. Dr. Martinez added. Captain Chun was working frantically at the control panels, trying to help speed up the sealing process. There has to be something else we can do, some way to improve our defenses. Zethkar studied the station systems, his mind racing. His people were known for their ability to understand complex technology quickly. There had to be something they were missing. Keeper Axiom, he said suddenly. You mentioned that this station has defensive systems. Where are they? Throughout the structure, but they require architect biology to operate. Your species cannot interface with them directly. What if we do not operate them directly? Zethkar asked. What if we modify them to work with our technology? The ancient being looked at him with interest. What do you propose? Zethkar pulled out his portable research computer and connected it to the nearest control panel. Villani systems are designed to interface with alien technology. We use adaptive protocols that can learn how foreign systems work. If I can create a bridge between our computers and your defensive systems, that might work, Dr. Martinez said, understanding what he was trying to do. Human ship computers are compatible with Villani systems. We could link everything together. Do it, Captain Chun ordered. We need those defenses online now. Zethkar worked faster than he had ever worked before. His fingers flew across the controls as he created new software programs that could translate between architect systems and modern technology. It was incredibly complex work, made more difficult by the constant vibrations as enemy weapons struck the station's outer shields. "Contact," the Perseverance reported. "Enemy ships are engaging the station directly. Our outer defenses are failing." Through the walls, they could see Devourer ships surrounding the facility. Their weapons were strange, seeming to drain energy rather than destroy with explosions. Parts of the station's outer hull were already turning dark as the enemy attacks drained power from the crystal structure. 30% power loss in outer sections, Keeper Axiom warned. "If they continue draining energy at this rate, the sealing process will fail." Zethkar's program suddenly connected. Throughout the station, ancient systems that had been dormant for millions of years began to awaken. Energy weapons emerged from hidden ports in the crystal hull. Defensive shields strengthened and began pushing back against the enemy attacks. "It is working," Dr. Martinez shouted as the station's weapons opened fire. The architect defensive systems were far more powerful than anything on the human ship. Beams of pure energy reached out and touched Devourer vessels, causing them to simply disappear. Not explode, not break apart, but vanish completely as if they had never existed. But for every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The Devourers kept coming, wave after wave of dark vessels that seemed to emerge from the empty space itself. 1 hour until the seal is complete," Keeper Axiom announced. "Multiple hull breaches in outer sections," Dr. Martinez reported. "They are boarding the station." Through the facility's internal sensors, they could see dark shapes moving through the corridors. The Devourers were not just ships and weapons. They were also creatures, beings of shadow and hunger that consumed everything they touched. "We need to protect the central chamber," Captain Chun said, checking her weapon. "If they reach the ceiling controls, everything we have done will be for nothing." The 2 security officers took positions at the chamber entrances. Captain Chun and Dr. Martinez continued working on the sealing process. Zethkar split his attention between maintaining the defensive systems and monitoring the internal sensors. The first Devourers reached the library chamber. They moved like living shadows, flowing through the crystal corridors faster than any organic being should be able to move. When they touched the floating books, the ancient knowledge simply vanished, consumed by their hunger for energy and information. "They are destroying everything," Zethkar said in horror. "Let them," Captain Chung replied grimly. "As long as they do not reach us before the seal is complete, we can rebuild. But if they stop us now, there will be nothing left to rebuild." Explosions echoed through the station as the security officers opened fire on the approaching creatures. Their weapons worked, but barely. Each Devourer took dozens of shots to stop, and there were hundreds of them flowing through the facility. 15 minutes until completion," Keeper Axiom said. "They will be here in 5, one of the security officers called out. Zethkar made a decision that surprised even himself. He drew his own weapon and moved to join the humans defending the chamber. As a researcher and archivist, he had never expected to fight for his life. But watching the humans refuse to give up had changed. The shadow creatures poured into the central chamber like a black tide. Zethkar fired his weapon again and again, watching as each energy bolt barely slowed the advancing Devourers. Beside him, the human security officers fought with a determination that amazed him. They did not retreat even when the creatures came within arm's reach. 10 minutes until completion, Keeper Axiom announced, his voice somehow remaining calm despite the chaos around them. Captain Chun continued working at the controls, her hands steady even as explosions shook the chamber. Dr. Martinez divided her attention between the sealing process and calling out tactical information to the defenders. "More contacts approaching from the lower levels," she shouted. "They found another way in." One of the security officers fell as a shadow creature, wrapped around him like liquid darkness. His partner immediately moved to cover his position, firing continuously at the growing number of enemies. But there were too many of them. "We cannot hold them much longer," the remaining officer called out. Zethkar saw something that made his heart stop. A massive shadow, larger than the others, was flowing along the ceiling toward the central pillar where Keeper Axiom stood. If it reached the ancient architect, the sealing process would end immediately. Without thinking, Zethkar ran toward the pillar. He had never been brave in his entire life. His people avoided danger and followed rules. But something about fighting alongside humans had changed him. He could not let them fail when they had come so far. The shadow creature dropped from the ceiling just as Zethkar reached the pillar. It was huge, easily 3 times his size, and its touch would drain all the life from his body in seconds. But he did not hesitate. He fired his weapon point blank into the creature's center. The energy bolt passed right through the shadow without effect. The creature reached out to grab him, and Zethkar knew he was about to die. But then something unexpected happened. Keeper Axiom stepped out of his crystal prison. The ancient architect moved faster than anything Zethkar had ever seen. His hand touched the shadow creature and it simply stopped existing. Not destroyed? Not dissolved, but erased from reality as if it had never been there. "How?" Zethkar gasped. "The sealing process has given me enough power to briefly return to physical form," Keeper Axiom explained. "But I can only maintain this state for a few minutes." The ancient being moved through the chamber like a force of nature. Every shadow creature he touched vanished instantly. Within moments, the central chamber was clear of enemies. But through the entrances, they could see more devourers approaching. 5 minutes until completion, Keeper Axiom said, but his form was already beginning to fade. "I cannot maintain physical existence much longer." Captain Chun looked up from the controls. "Can you hold them for 5 more minutes?" 3 minutes at most, the architect replied. "Then we make 3 minutes enough," Captain Chun said with determination. She activated her communicator. "All Perseverance crew, this is the captain. We need everything you have. All power, all weapons, all courage, hold nothing back." Through the station's sensors, they watched the human ship make what could only be called a suicide run. It flew directly into the heart of the Devourer fleet, all weapons firing. The ship was heavily damaged, pieces of its hull breaking away under enemy fire, but it did not stop. "What are they doing?" Zethkar asked. "But buying us time," Dr. Martinez replied, tears in her eyes as she watched her friends sacrifice themselves. The Perseverance exploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking dozens of enemy ships with it. The explosion created a temporary gap in the Devourer formations, giving the station's defensive systems a chance to target the remaining attackers. 2 minutes until completion, Keeper Axiom announced. His physical form was now completely transparent, but he continued to guard the central pillar. More shadow creatures flooded into the chamber. This time, there were hundreds of them, more than even an architect could stop. They spread across the floor like spilled ink. Reaching toward the control panels, Zethkar and the surviving security officer fired frantically, but their weapons were almost useless against so many enemies. The creatures were going to reach the controls before the sealing process finished. Then something amazing happened. The crystal books from the library came flying into the chamber. Thousands of them, moving like a flock of glowing birds. They surrounded the shadow creatures, their pages flashing with brilliant light. Where the light touched the devourers, the creatures screamed and dissolved. The knowledge itself is fighting them, Keeper Axiom said in wonder. The accumulated wisdom of millions of years refuses to be consumed. The books created a barrier of light around the central pillar, holding back the tide of darkness. But Zethkar could see that even this would not be enough. There were too many enemies, and the books were being destroyed one by one as they fought. 1 minute until completion, Keeper Axiom said. His voice was growing faint as his physical form continued to fade. The largest shadow creature Zethkar had ever seen entered the chamber. It was as tall as the ceiling and moved like a living storm cloud. The crystal books that tried to stop it were simply absorbed into its darkness. Nothing seemed able to slow it down, but then Captain Chun did something that would stay with Zethkar. For the rest of his life, she stepped away from the control panels and walked directly toward the massive creature. In her hand was a small device that Zethkar recognized as a ship's self-destruct mechanism. "Captain, no!" Dr. Martinez shouted. "Keep working on the seal," Captain Chun ordered without turning around. "That is a direct order." She walked up to the shadow creature and activated the device. "You want to consume something? Try this." The explosion was not large, but it was bright. Incredibly bright. The light seemed to drive back every shadow in the chamber, giving the remaining defenders a clear view of the control panels. "Seal completion in 10 seconds, Keeper Axiom announced. Dr. Martinez's hands flew across the controls, making the final adjustments. Zethkar helped her, his knowledge of architect systems guiding her through the last complex sequences. 5 seconds, Keeper Axiom said. The remaining shadow creatures made one final rush toward the pillar. 3 seconds. Zethkar fired his weapon until it overheated and stopped working. 1 second. Dr. Martinez pressed the final control. The dimensional seal activated with a sound like reality itself, tearing and healing at the same time. A wave of energy spread out from the station, racing across space faster than light. When it reached the distant dimensional breach, there was a flash that could be seen from hundreds of light years away, then silence. The shadow creatures in the chamber simply faded away like smoke. Throughout space around the station, the Devourer ships stopped moving and began to dissolve. Cut off from their home dimension, they could not maintain their existence in normal reality. "The seal is complete," Keeper Axiom said. His physical form was gone, but his voice still echoed in their minds. "The dimensional breach is permanently closed. The Devourers cannot return." Zethkar collapsed to his knees, exhausted beyond anything he had ever experienced. Dr. Martinez was crying as she tried to contact any survivors from the Perseverance. The remaining security officer was bandaging his wounds and checking on his fallen comrade. Then something unexpected happened. The air in the chamber began to shimmer and new figures appeared. They were tall and graceful, made of pure light instead of solid matter. Zethkar recognized them immediately from his historical research. The architects had returned. "Well done," one of the light beings said. "We felt the completion of the seal from our higher dimension. We came to witness this moment and to offer our gratitude." Keeper Axiom's crystal pillar began to glow brighter. "My guardianship is complete. I may now join my people in transcendence." But the lead architect shook his head. "The galaxy still needs guardians. And these younger species have proven themselves worthy of our knowledge. We offer them a choice." Zethkar looked up at the beings of light. "What choice?" "We can share our advanced technology with you. Guide your civilizations toward eventual transcendence like ourselves. Or we can leave you to develop naturally, learning and growing at your own pace." Dr. Martinez wiped her eyes and stood up straighter. "What would you recommend?" The architect seemed to smile, though it was hard to tell with a being made of light, that you choose your own path. You have shown that your species can face the impossible and find ways to succeed. You do not need our guidance. Zethkar thought about everything that had happened. The humans could have run when they discovered the facility. They could have called for help instead of acting on their own. But they had chosen to stand and fight, even when the odds were hopeless. "We choose freedom," he said, speaking for both species. "But we would like to remain friends." The architects began to fade back to their higher dimension. "Then friends we shall be. And perhaps when your civilizations are ready, we will meet again as equals." As the light beings disappeared, Keeper Axiom stepped out of his pillar one final time. But instead of transcending with the others, he looked at the humans and Villani who had fought so hard to save the galaxy. "If you will have me," he said, "I would like to remain here, to help your species understand the knowledge in this facility. There is much you can learn and much you can teach in return."